So we've done lots of stuff in the past about blocking in and, you know, bigger areas. So what I'm going to do is work on a little bit of the detail now. Even though parts of this picture aren't finished, I want to sort of get most of this nailed down before I start doing these other pieces, which means that I've got to get it fairly close to being finished. So what I'll do now is I'll do a whole heap of very thin glazes and little washes here and there to change the shape of things a little bit and to push things back into the shadows and back, or not. But the other thing I'll do, or that this will do, is create that lovely luminosity and sort of really brilliant colour. And sometimes they're almost imperceptible, these little shifts, but it's amazing the difference they make to a picture. Most direct sunlight on them and leaving them more with a whiter light on them, and the ones where the sunlight is less direct, so maybe, you know, in the shadows here, I might make that, or these ones actually, as they're facing up like that, I'm happy to soften that direct light on them a little bit, and these ones here. But anywhere where it's flat relative to my eye, I'm going to put a lot of white. So I'm mixing a little bit of forest green and phthalo green together, and you can see as I put them over this white here how thin that colour is and how translucent they are, so that'll help give me my brightness. I don't know if you can see that little bit of kind of lovely bluey green start to show through there. It's very subtle, but it's amazing how much difference it makes to the whole picture. If you run that little bit of luminous green too over that sort of goldy yellowy colour, it makes that green seem a little bit more luminous too. Makes that lovely backlit light. phthalo green's quite cool, so it's got a little bit of almost blue about it. So when you put it in these shadows over those highlights there, it gets this lovely blue-green colour. It's just another little flash of colour that helps create the optical illusion. The other thing this glaze is doing is it's softening the transition from this part here back into the cooler shadows in the tree. So in the process of putting those little glazes on here and there, I've lost a little bit of the brightness of the white. So I'm just going to come back over and just bump up the white in a few places. And it's sort of that transition from darks through to lights, but all the little nuance in between that creates that illusion of depth. But it's also there where you get to sneak in these lovely luminous bright colours. So the white, even though it seems like just a small thing, those highlights are sort of there. It sort of sets off all the other colours, in my opinion. If you break up that line on the edges of sort of those Pandanus trees where they turn up, or those Pandanus leaves where they turn up, just sort of do that. Kind of creates the impression of those spikes. Oops. And you'll notice too that when I'm putting the paint down strongly, I'm using the brush when it's loaded up to do those lines, but then as the paint diminishes on the brush, I start doing more of this sort of area and softening it back like that. Just saves walking back to the palette every time. Don't let anyone tell you that laziness is a bad thing. Areas like this are great places to bang up that white. Now you might have noticed I left a little gap there. That gap is actually that shadow, a continuation of that shadow, but it's actually going the wrong way. It should go that way, like that. I'll fix that up later. So I'm going out of my little sequence a bit at the moment because there's something that sort of called me to work on it, and I want to do it before I forget. And I also want to do it for the glory because it looks good. Just putting a few of those scratch marks and scars on it. So I'm an impulsive bugger, and I can see that that leaf's hanging down here, and it's going to be casting a shadow. It would be casting a shadow over that. Even if that one wasn't, this one would. So I'm just going to paint that in now, and there's a fair chance that this could all go horribly wrong. But we'll see. Not quite the right colour, but now personally I think that looks a little bit odd by itself there, that little bit of shadow. So I'll do this one too. The great thing about that is if it doesn't work, we just paint over it. Can live with that for the moment. I'm staying with that same colour, but I've changed brushes. This brush is a little bit firmer, so it kind of enables me to push into the surface a little bit more and get a sort of a softer mark. So what I'm going to do now is just come back, and wherever these kind of little shadows are that are cast on the leaves, I'm just going to do that along the edge of them. And I don't know if you can see that, but it really does give it a bit of a zap in the shadows. It makes the shadows a bit darker, but it also gives you this lovely kind of fluoro highlight along the edge of the leaf where it transitions from light into the dark. And I reckon it looks great. So one of the great things about these trees is that they're all very beaten up and scraggly. And so what happens is there's a couple of areas here where I've repainted things and I've gone over, you know, over parts of the leaf with the sky colour or reflections and things. But what that means is that later on I'll come back and put scars all over the leaves, and if I'm clever I'll put them here and there where that colour's gone over the leaf, so it hides, so I don't have to repaint the whole leaf. I just put a scar there. Okay, I'm just going to bump up some of the highlights on these folded over leaves here just to get them to do that more and to tidy up some of my mess. I'll start over there, right-handed. If I don't, I'll probably stick my arm in it later. So I'm using French ultramarine blue and white, and I could actually do this a different colour with a bit more phthalo in it, but it's one of those things where you could, you know, fiddle around with that colour for hours and it's not really going to make a difference, but by putting this lovely warm French ultramarine blue on here, it kind of creates the impression that there's that lovely warm light outside being reflected back into the shadows, and that lovely summer sky reflected onto the leaves. These leaves are actually quite reflective, quite shiny. One of the things I've been trying to do here is get this leaf to have this lovely bend in it. I've been wrestling with how to define it without and still stay true to the elements of the picture. Not there yet. So what I'm doing here is reflecting light back up off whatever's down here, back on the underside of all of the branches. So it'll go, you know, along here, like that. But it'll also go on the underside of these, like this, and here. Probably a bit there, and also on here on these dead branches there. And sometimes these little bits are a bit tedious, but they make all the difference at the end. Give it there. I've got that same colour again, but now I'm going to do all the finer work. So that reflection there underneath is going to be on all the bottom edge of all of these leaves here. And a lot of this will disappear back into the picture, but I still feel like I need to put it in. So I'm just going to put a bit more meat in these kind of brown leaves now. So what I've done is I've mixed burnt umber, phthalo blue and a little bit of permanent alizarin. So phthalo blue and permanent alizarin is a fantastic colour to whack into really deep dark shadows, and I've added the burnt umber to it because it's obviously sitting on a burnt umber leaf, so that's going to make that transition sort of a little less jarring. So I'll just do that here and there in here, places like that there, and then just sort of soften that so it looks like that leaf's emerging out of the shadows. I'll try not to get up onto those lights that I've bounced up underneath, but sometimes you can't help it. There. This is a really nice trick for sort of having leaves appear like they're coming out of the shadows, like this one here. I'll put that in under there like that. So now it looks like that leaf is emerging out from underneath those ones. I can kind of create the illusion, put a little bit more light in here and bring this leaf forward a little bit more now by running a strip of light down the edge of this leaf if I want to, maybe a bit over there. So I'm just going to bump that white up there first because I've got the brush in my hand. Oops. And I'll come back and soften that transition up in a minute. Just going to drag a little bit of light down here, like that. And I can actually twist this leaf a little bit here too, just by doing that. So it looks like the light's hitting that edge. I might that right around. When the sun hits the front edge of these leaves, you get that lovely white line. But what actually happens too is on the other side, you get this lovely yellow line there where the sun hits the edge of the leaf, and it's sort of a bit lighter anyway, but get that lovely flash of gold along it. And it's really quite pretty, so we'll chuck it in. just a matter of wandering around the picture and looking for more opportunities to put it in. And another one. And again, like all of these things, they seem so small, but they make all the difference to the picture in the end. You like that? There's obviously a lot more to do with this. This is one of those parts of the painting where it could take a week or a couple of hours. But anyway, you can see how those little shifts make all of the difference. So if you like that, make sure you like it, subscribe, and if you want, become a member.